And I'd like to point out that I'm wearing my Nerf herder shirt today. My
Nerf
wife
herders.
got me. Every once in a while you get tired of wearing the same polo over and over again. If anybody ever wants to know a secret about Adam Walter, if you ever look at me, I don't wear standard black shirts underneath our polos. I always have some nerd shirt on underneath. I have one standard black shirt that I wear on a rare occasion. But like, it's what is underneath. Is it a Linux cheat sheet? Is it a Star Wars shirt? What is it today? Is it the Terminator? Like, there's always some nerd shirt I'm wearing underneath. So what am I today?
Right.
And so today I decided I was going to wear my Nerf herder shirt, So I'm a scruffy looking Nerf herder. But anyways, that's what I am underneath. And the way this segues in here is we're talking about MSP personas. Like, you are an owner of an MSP, or you are just one of the chief people in MSP, but you wear multiple hats. Well, what hat are you wearing today? What persona, what shirt do you have on today? What hat do you have on today? Are you the CFO? Are you in CEO mode? Are you determining the direction of your company and what clients you're going to go after? Are you in COO? Are you trying to figure out who needs to be hired next? What kind of stack offerings you want to give to your clients? And I think in MSPs, people tend to like merge all of these into one big spaghetti mess, and they can't tell which activity goes where because you've never really been in a corporate setting where this is really well defined. And so you can see in a corporate setting that this person is the CFO. They have their roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, exactly.
And CEO had their responsibilities. They cross over a lot, but for the most part, they're in their box. As an MSP, you don't get that feeling until you get a bit larger. So we want to talk about how do you flip between the personas to decide, what am I doing today? Like I was telling Skip before this call started, like if Adam Walter has to put on his CFO hat, put on something like Guardians of the Galaxy in the background, or like some movie or something entertaining, because I'm sitting there and I'm building this nice budget spreadsheet. I'm matching up receipts to expenses and trying to figure out where the heck I spent all of our cash, where the cash is going. I'm doing forecasting, and like it is not the most mind intensive for Adam Walter because it is not my strength. And so my brain wants to do other things. So if I say, hey, I'm going to put on this really entertaining movie, I'm in CFO mode. Now, if I'm in CEO mode where I'm trying to decide, like, okay, which client segment are we after? It's quiet in here. Like I might play some music and that's it. Because I need to focus and I need to really use a lot of my brain to think about, where are we going as a company? How are we doing this? What is the vertical we're after? Where's the marketplace we're hitting? That requires a lot of work, but I enjoy that, so I don't need the distraction as much.
Right. Well, I mean, think about your title. All right. So, the business card, that's always, what do you put there? President, CEO, chairman, it gets creative. Do you want to be pretentious or, not, whatever that is. So a great example this week, we got a new dog not too long ago. He's gotten kind of big. It's time to get him groomed. And so there is a ridiculous kind of application process just to get your dog down to the basic groomers. I don't know. I don't understand it all. But anyway, and we're having to fill out this questionnaire. My wife is asking me, so what is your job title? What do I put here? And I just said, put director. All right. And she said, director of what? And I said, pick one. I'm all three, I'm doing marketing stuff,
success, marketing,
whatever it is today. And we do, I think we switch between these modes, and sometimes we get, maybe we're good at it, I don't know, but we get into this groove where we can switch almost without thinking, but then we kind of start to lose focus. It becomes blurry. Am I working on marketing, or am I working in HubSpot on the technical elements? And if I don't maintain some focus, then I'll get distracted by something, and I'll sit down to do one thing and I'll find myself doing another, right? It's because I just didn't, maybe that's not always bad, but I didn't maintain the focus I needed. And sometimes we need some tools. We need some some clarity around, hey, these are what I need to be doing right now, because we've got specific jobs and problems we have to solve and things to accomplish. And if we don't maintain the focus on those things, then we'll end up doing a whole lot of things, but not getting anything done. And that's really frustrating. Nope. Did we lose your audio, Adam?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
I put myself on mute because I was typing a note.
Nah.
And Skip has me using this really loud keyboard, which is super satisfying. People, like you've got to have that tactical feedback.
Yes, if it isn't loud, it isn't any good.
Yeah, those soft, squishy keyboards, they lost all of their style. Like their soul was gone. And all those, people who don't know what we're talking about, you young whippersnappers need to blow your nose or something.
Yeah,
the old people with the IBM keyboards, we know.
Oh yeah, some of those old ones.
But anyways, putting on different hats, you get things confused. You get things conflicted. So we hear people they look at our software and they're like, well, I need to talk about tickets. That's your COO hat. And that is you operational. This is very important. And you should talk about that in the right context.
Oh, that is so important. Yes.
And so who is on that team that you need to be talking about tickets with? That's your COO role. Now, when you're in a CFO role, you're not talking about tickets. You're talking about receipts. You're talking even then, that's a very tiny piece of the CFO role. You're talking about expenses. You're talking about budgetary. You're talking about all these things. And that is your CFO persona. You're acting in that context. Well, I really want to talk about tickets. Okay, pause, schedule that for another time, because right now we're in our CFO role. Or CEO. I really want to talk about finances and where we are. Cool. That's a small piece of what a CEO is doing. They need that for context. They can decide direction. Are you running low on cash on hand? Is cash flow really good? These are things that CEO needs to know. So you say, do we need to expand our marketing presence? Do we need to expand our operational presence? And the CEO is thinking about those things. It's not that the other stuff isn't important. It's that you have to think in terms of a CEO. And that's what this entire podcast episode is about. We'll talk about the CFO, COO, and even a CRO later on. Is the CEO needs to know the little pieces so they can stitch them together into a vision. I had a conversation with an MSP recently about, they had some great marketing campaigns going, but they weren't sticking. They weren't bringing any new clients in. And I said, well, from your CEO standpoint, he needs to think, who am I targeting? Mm-hmm. He's putting a little bit of marketing flair there. How much revenue do I want to generate? Who is going to be my niche market? And so once you define those, now you can define better marketing strategy. You can define better stack alignment, because now you're starting to bring in Chromebooks because you're targeting schools, making sure that you've got a stack for Chromebooks. You're targeting engineering firms, so you're getting AutoCAD, and you're making sure that you have really great contacts with AutoCAD and GIS support. Now you can make decisions as a CEO. And then you can hand this off and say, hey, COO, we need to be prepared to handle Google Classroom and Chromebooks. Because I think there's a lot of money to be made here. We've got a lot of schools that are underserved in this market, and I want to hit them. So, and then he goes up to the marketing officer and says, hey, we're going to be hitting the school market. Develop me a marketing campaign around building schools up and giving them better experiences for their kids. Now, marketing person goes, yay. And this is the CEO. They're not doing the work. They're setting the strategy and putting the ship in the direction it needs to go. But if you get your ideas confused, you're going to be like, oh, I need to do this work now. And you're going to flip right into the CMO role, chief marketing officer role. And you're going to say, I'm going to start working on this market strategy. I am going to build up this campaign. And now you have lost your vision setting. You haven't lined up everything yet. You stopped because now you put on your CMO role hat instead of saying, okay, I know I have to wear these hats. I'm not going to do the marketing campaign right now. I'm going to set that for next Thursday. I'm going to do it for 2 hours. I'm going to work on that. But first, I need to put on my operational hat or talk to my operations officer, put on my operations hat, and say, how am I going to deliver Google Classroom to my clients? How am I going to track these schools? Okay, I don't have a Google admin. I don't have anybody who's an expert in that.
We got to figure this out. Yeah.
I got to figure this out. And so I'm going to spend like next week figuring this out. I'm going to schedule some time to work on this. What else am I missing to hit this particular niche? I need to make some contacts. I need to hit up some areas so that we are known as this kind of like, we can bring this cool new thing. We can help your school be prepared for ChatGPT.
Yep.
Using it as an education tool and getting rid of plagiarism.
Yeah. Well, and
you're going to provide that solution.
The challenging part about this is, I think, again, going back, maybe it's just me, but being the technical minded person, I want to evaluate all these options and pick the absolutely best one. I want to be confident in, the choices that we make. But in some of these business environments, it's just not that clear. And I thought it was hilarious. Earlier this week, we were on one of our internal calls, and we're talking about a couple of modules that we want to develop for the software. And both are needed, both very valuable. We're, talking through them. They're on the roadmap. They're going to happen, but which one is going to happen first? Yep. And so Adam and I are going back and forth, and, I'm talking about how this one would help and what I need out of this one, and back and forth. And Adam was like, but we can only do one. And I said, I know. And I'm just going to beat around the bush until you pick one,
Yeah.
Because once he picks it, now I can focus my efforts. Is he going to make the right decision? Probably so. But regardless, we're going to be able to get something done because we've got direction and focus, and we can accomplish something. And then we'll move on and get something else done. But otherwise, we're going to just keep chipping away kind of aimlessly at two really good objectives and get neither one of them accomplished. And that doesn't do our business any good.
Yeah. And that's why you've got to balance the hat as a CEO in your company. You cannot say, yes, I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to do this. And you get lost in operations. Now you're in the operational role.
Yep.
Get that hat off. Stay in your MSP CEO persona for this next hour and make wise decisions and schedule out time with yourself or with the person who's responsible. So like when Skip says, like, we had two things to decide between these modules, our coders can only work so fast, people. And if we give them three things to work on simultaneously, it's going to muddy the waters.
Yes, very much.
Now, if I have infinite cash and infinite people, comes an easy problem, but that's not the way the real world works. We have to focus on something, and the CEO has to make the decision, usually around which one is going to drive revenue. So like when we're talking about two modules, one was going to benefit existing members and help improve them. And the other module is going to wow people who like are on the edge of buying our product. And they're like, whoa, so I get instant gratification. Now both benefit a new member and existing members, but one of them benefits more for people sitting on the edge. Like, I immediately get this value. Yes. You don't have to do anything other than copy and paste a piece of code. And that becomes a really great thing. So we say, let's do that first. But if we sit there and try to hem and haw and beat around the bush and like waste our time, neither one's going to get done. And we're going to be sitting 3 months down the road with a product that has not been improved. You got to make a call. As a CEO, their job is to make the call. Not that Skip's thing that he wants to work on, I love it. I actually have already shelled it out, and the dev team has already shelled it out. It is ready to be put into development. We just haven't gotten to being the highest priority yet. It's a great idea. And we all agree, but we have to prioritize. We have to decide what's best for our members and our company, and work on those things. So then we can flip over to, like, Adam will take off his CEO hat and he'll put on his chief developer hat, design officer, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to sit down with the developers and we're going to talk through the JSON scripts. We're going to talk through how things are working and where this relates and how it maps into the API calls for ConnectWise and all that stuff.
Right.
That every Wednesday morning, it's nerdy, nerd.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But it's because we have the persona time set up. And so like in our software, we're switching to this idea of things called scenarios, which makes complete sense to me. Right. To personas, which is something like Sean Lardo said, use personas because people understand what a persona is. Mm-hmm. And so now you can build this dashboard that gives you context. These are the things I'm going to talk about when I'm in this mode. And so now I give myself permission to avoid talking about other things because they're on another persona.
Yes.
And if the client wants to talk about things, I switch over to my COO persona or I switch over to my CEO persona. And now people are like, oh, so these are the things on the agenda, right? Yes. What about tickets? If you want to talk about tickets, we need to have an operations meeting. Mm-hmm. If you want to talk about how your company is running and how we're going to give you additional features in your Google Classroom, they're going to give you an edge as a school of choice, then we need to talk about that now. So we're talking about these opportunities. On our dashboard, it's all the opportunities that are in the recommended or proposed phase. And you're sitting there looking at them going, well, why are all the ones we're doing right now? Like, that's operations. That's stuff we're doing right now.
We're
talking about how can we help you succeed? What can we plan that will help your school be better?
Yep. And think about your own experiences. So, we've all been in those meetings where I think I've mentioned this example here of late, but it seems top of mind. You schedule a meeting with a customer and you go on site and you go, all right, this ought to be like 45 minutes or something. It'd be easy. We'll be able to, go and have a long lunch or whatever. And it's 2.5 hours later and people are clawing their way out of the conference room. They're like, I gotta go. It's just, this meetings de-evolve into these long discussions. And if you look back at those.
De-evolved is not a word.
It sounds good. If you look back at those meetings and look at the roles, the personas that were utilized, and they're all over the board. I mean, it was every one you had. And that is why so many of your meetings don't end up being very productive, is because we have too many personas at the table and we don't have the right focus. And it's also why we don't get some of the personas or the roles that we want from our clients to show up, because they think, oh, that meeting's not for me. The CEO is one of the more challenging roles to get into your QBR, your SBR, whatever you call it, your technology review of some sort, because they don't see that there's a value for them at those meetings. And it's because they show up to those in the past and they've seen all these other roles. Their CEO counterpart role, their persona, is not in that meeting. So like, I don't need to be here. They're being focused. And you've got to switch over to this ability where you can be focused as well, engage with the right roles, and then your meetings get much, much more productive.
Yeah. And we refer to those meetings that just kind of like end up in the weeds. Those are just disorganized. You didn't have a goal for the meeting. What's the outcome of this meeting going to be? And if you have the CEO role, your goal is to improve the company. Mm-hmm. Or if you're meeting with a client as a CEO, throw this idea of VCO out of your head. But when you're meeting with your client as the CEO, as the owner, say, hey, how can I help your company succeed? That is your goal. How can I help your company make more money? That is your goal. You are not a technology officer anymore. You are not anything else. You are the CEO of an MSP who has solutions that can help this client succeed as well. And so they say, well, we're really struggling in our manufacturing plant with education. Like, well, why don't you have a LMS portal? What's an LMS portal? Well, any manufacturing plant knows what an LMS, learning management system, is, because Anyways, but the whole point is you as the CEO are starting to think in terms of them and what makes them successful, rather than how do I get them this firewall? How do I get these screws into their environment? And so what we want to do is we want to focus on how do we make things succeed? And we want to talk about finance and budgeting and personnel hires. That's the CFO role. And that's important to know. Like you think, oh, that's an operational. No, that's usually the CFO role. The CFO world is largely focused on how do I hire who for what seat. So the
Because they're
operations officer,
spending
man,
money.
things are really slow here. The CFO says, okay, let's see if we can't solve this with personnel. And then they have this big old problem of finding the personnel. That's not a CEO role. That's not a COO role. So yeah, I love personas. I really like this box because a lot of you have grown up in these MSPs and you are fantastic engineers. And learning how to lead effectively is hard. It is difficult. Not everybody can do it. But yet here you are, you're trying your hardest, learning from the school of hard knocks and wondering, why do you keep losing vision? Why aren't you getting more customers? Why are things kind of unraveling and you're not making profits? And it's because you need to wear your different hats effectively. Yes, you are the CFO, you are the COO, you are the CEO, but you've got to compartmentalize those. No one can like sit there and connect them all at the same time. It just doesn't work that way. You've got to decide, okay, today I'm going to work on finance. Today I'm going to work on, or this hour I'm going to work on direction of the company. And that's why QBRs are important. We've lost that focus because we start treating them like a catch-all meeting.
Yes, the catch-all meetings is what they've become. You're absolutely right. That defines those, and then they don't succeed. We sit down and we have the annual QBR, right? Because we were going to do 4 of them in a year, but we did the first one, and then nobody wanted to show up to any of the other ones, and it went on for so long that yes, we finally have to have another QBR a year later, and we do it all over again. We because we're backlogged now. We've got so many things that we need to talk about with the client, and we unload all of that in one engagement with all these different personas, and the meetings aren't effective. The engagement doesn't provide the value that we're really looking for, and it just drops us back into this cycle again. But if we can be intentional about those engagements, then we'll get a whole lot more done.
Yeah. And again, focus, people. And that's what these next series is going to be on, is focus and how to focus. Where do you define the role? And in your company, you need to define what a CEO is going to do, because ultimately when you define this is what a CEO does, and this is the role I want to be in as a CEO, or the role I don't want to be in, I do not want to deal with vision setting and strategy, then you know who you're going to have to hire someday. You know how to delegate that out to another person. And because as an owner, you don't have to fill the CEO role. You don't have to fill the CFO role. You get to decide how those roles are filled, but you have to design out roles and responsibilities. You can Google that. How do I define roles and responsibilities at my company? And you will find a billion books written on this subject.
Yep.
One, read it. Read one of the Traction EOS books. Find somebody who can give you some mentorship there. Go to an Evolve meeting. Go to a Taylor Business Group and ask questions about how do I define the executive roles in my company. And there's a lot that goes into this, but you have to define them. You have to define roles and responsibilities, or you're going to end up nowhere. You're going to end up paralyzed, and you're like, why is my company not growing? It's because you're not.
Well, here's a bit of bonus on that one. You look at your team and you're thinking, I need a CFO, or maybe it's a sales, or any of these other roles. And you look at your budget and you're like, I can afford to hire another person, especially at a director level. Well, you may have people in your organization that can do the same thing that you're doing. They can switch these personas, but sometimes you need to set them down and say, I'm going to give you 2 job roles. I understand you're not going to be able to do a full-time job for each, but here are your defined roles. And if you can define that for your team members as well, then you're empowering them to be successful, rather than saying, oh, I want you to go do this marketing thing and I have you do this sales thing, and just kind of passing out things like you're dealing cards. People aren't going to be able to say, this is my focus right now. I've got an hour and a half until my next meeting. I'm going to focus in this persona and not just solve a task, but I'm going to operate in this role to complete our objective. And you need to empower not just yourself, but empower your team to exist within these personas.
Yes. And that's kind of the power that we're trying to push on the market here. And these are roles and responsibilities that already exist. You just need to learn. And like I had to learn myself, like what the difference between the COO and CEO roles was. And as I ran my company, like I had some great mentors that taught me a lot of this throughout the last 20 years. And I brought that with me into my company. And it helps a lot when I'm thinking, okay, that's important, but it's a not now thing. It's not, it's the Eisenhower matrix that I push hard if you're getting to a coaching session with me. And it's like, that is important. It's not now. Let's do it later. And keeping that focus as a CEO is what makes you a good CEO. And you got to put that hat on. And we do have like more to talk about on this. We have more we want to say. I think next week we're going to either talk through the CR. I'm trying to figure out how to order these. Next week will probably be either I want to coordinate so the CISO comes out about the same time we're at IT Nation Secure.
There we go.
The CSO, CRO role, and kind of some misconceptions there and what that role is. And as well as in the CFO role, like a little misconceptions around there. And so we can get some guest speakers on here. And if you're interested in speaking on one of these topics, for you to reach out to us and we'll try to get you in. In the meantime, we'll see you guys next week.
See you.